Refused to let two Tennessee Bureau of Investigation agents search their house without a warrant. They say what the agents did next was a crime.
For the last year, NewsChannel 5 Investigates has been asking who investigates the investigators. But the TBI tells our chief investigative reporter Phil Williams that what you're about to see is exactly what agents are trained to do.
We planned for this house for years, and this home was a part of us and our heart.
The U.S. Constitution says people have a right to feel secure in their homes. It's a right that Marilyn Wortman had always taken for granted until one afternoon 3 years ago.
It was utter terror. I didn't know whether we were going to be killed, arrested. I could not believe that someone was breaking into our home.
It was a nightmare.
Fred Wortman says it began when two TBI agents, Mark Reynolds and Jeff Jackson, came to their Lake County home looking for evidence for a case involving an adult son who did not even live with them.
Opened the door and I said, can I help you? And he said, can we come in and sit down and talk to you? And I said, no, you can't come into my house, but I'll step outside the door and talk to you.
Outside, the two agents asked Wortman if they could search his house. Their son, who was already in jail for attempting to have his wife killed, had told another inmate that there were some valuables inside his parents' house that he might be able to get to pay someone to carry out the plot. The two agents wanted to seize those valuables, even though they knew the parents were not involved.
And I said, do you have a search warrant? And he said, no, we don't have a search warrant. And I said, well, in that case, I'm going to ask you to get off my porch and get out off of my property until you go and get a search warrant.
You thought it was your constitutional right to say no to a search.
No, I knew it was my constitutional right. So I opened the door, went back in the house. I shut it just like this.
Suddenly, Wortman says he heard the sound of someone attempting to crash through the door.
I mean, hitting it. And so I pushed up against the door, started screaming, get off my property.
What were they trying to do?
They was trying to force their way into the house.
Fred was screaming numerous times, get out of our house. Marilyn called 911.
I was able to withstand their beating the door for about three pushes, and then they knocked me back like this and came in.
In their own investigative report, the agents admitted that due to the complexity of the search warrant, they did not even try to get one. That Fred Wortman was telling agents to get the hell off his property and that he entered his own residence and tried to shut the door. But instead of leaving, they claimed they pushed the door open out of fear that he might produce a weapon from inside the home.
First words out of his mouth, I could have shot you. I thought you was going for a gun.
You were not going for a gun?
No, I wasn't going for the gun. I hadn't even thought about going for a gun.
The agents also claimed that they needed to secure potential evidence in the residence that Mr. Wortman was now aware of.
But I can tell you from my review of the case that the agents did exactly what they were trained to do.
TBI Director David Roush says that Reynolds and Jackson went to the house fully expecting that the Wortmans would willingly give up the property they were wanting to seize. When Fred refused, Roush says that's when they needed to take steps to make sure the evidence wasn't destroyed.
And then at that point, they did what the law allows, and that is to hold the scene until a search warrant can be obtained.
So you're okay with TBI agents going to a house and asking for consent to search? And if the homeowner says no, you're okay with them bursting into the house?
No, sir. That's not what I said.
That's what happened in this case.
Well, now so again, we're getting into specifics that I can't argue on TV.
We kept asking them for a search warrant. What do you want? Please get out of our home.
One of the TBI agents finally put Lake County Sheriff Brian Avery on the phone, and the sheriff rushed to the Wortman's home with a number of deputies.
I said, I want those people out of my house, and they're not to come back without a search warrant. So he did carry them, walked them out to the porch, and then they left.
The sheriff's deputies planted themselves in the Wortman's living room until the TBI agents got back 5 hours later with a search warrant. Wortman later took out an arrest warrant for the two TBI agents for breaking into his home. But the DA, Phil Bivens, immediately dismissed it.
He said, Fred, I can't do anything to the TBI.
Bivens, who had to work with those agents, tells NewsChannel 5 Investigates he dismissed that warrant because he did not think what they had done was a crime. Finally, in his quest for justice, Mr. Wortman took his story here to the Lake County Courthouse. In a nearly unprecedented move, the grand jury indicted the two TBI agents, charging them with aggravated burglary, aggravated assault, and aggravated kidnapping.
By statute, it is appropriate for us to go.
DA Kim Helper from Franklin was brought in after the local DA recused himself. You'll remember Helper from our Policing for Profit investigation for her lenient attitude toward officers pressuring drivers to consent to searches.
If I have not committed a crime, is it proper for a police officer to make me think that I have?
I believe that officers can use a variety of techniques.
Helper went before a judge and dismissed the indictment against the two agents.
So did you have the sense that they were almost untouchable?
Yes, nobody can control them as far as I can see.
The charges against the TBI agents were expunged. As a result, Helper says it would be illegal and unethical for her to talk about why she did what she did.
The mental anguish and trauma, we still suffer from it today.
Marilyn Wortman says when she looks around, she's still haunted by memories of that day.
That my home was invaded, that I was held hostage in my home, that my home was degraded.
Now the Wortmans are suing the two agents who they say violated their constitutional rights.
And I can tell you, they followed what the Supreme Court says is allowable in these situations.
The TBI has called it retaliation for an investigation that ultimately sent their son to prison.
What they did had nothing to do with our son. What they did had something to do with us by breaking into our house without a search warrant and threatening to kill us. That's what happened to us, not anything to do with our son.
The TBI director tells me that because the agents had told Mr. Wortman what they were looking for, it created what the courts call an exigent circumstance, where they had to force their way into the house and secure the scene while they tried to get a search warrant. But I spoke to veteran defense attorney Jim Todd. He told me the courts have been very clear that officers cannot create those circumstances themselves and then use that as justification for barging into someone's home. Vicki?